Good afternoon, saints, and thank you, my elder. I think, elder, before we discipline, we are going to do risk. So I'm starting with risk before I do the discipline. I think that's the order we have put it. The risk management is a very fairly new component in terms of the church. Now I'm talking as a senior citizen, because previously these are the things that were never in place, but these things were put in place because we have to align ourselves with what is happening out in the world. As an organization, it is a requirement that we manage our risks. Risk management becomes a very critical component of our ministry, because we are dealing with the very vulnerable among us, and we're dealing with the ones that need a lot of protection and security. So I think in approaching the risk management, we will look at it using a number of examples, and as well as drawing on what is happening in the world around us. If I may just, so I've done it again. If I may go to the, to the slide, just to give you a high level in terms of the content. We're looking at protecting the children. Why do we need to, and what are the risks that we protect them against? How to protect the children, the role of the church, the role of the leader, the role of the volunteer, and why are church vulnerable to some of the risks, and then some of the important facts in terms of the stats of what is happening around us, and then the screening of volunteers, and then the protection during outings and activities. What is risk assessment? It's a process of identifying the hazards and risk factors that have potential to cause harm. The process also includes analyzing and evaluating the risk associated with a particular hazard. So these are the steps that you would undertake. In fact, let me take a step back and say that risk assessment is a very critical and important component of any organization. This is also supported by the King4, which is governing the activities of various organizations. So unfortunately, because we are an organization, much as we are a church, we are also an organization, a body that is organized for one purpose or the other. We also subscribe to such requirements. So risk assessment is one of those requirements that's part of your governance in an organization. So it's important that you identify your risk or the hazards. You identify the hazards that have the potential to harm the child. I've given an example. A hazard could be a child molester. In this case, we need to decide who may be harmed, which are the children. You need to assess this risk and take action. So, how exposed are we? Then, depending on the number of people that have been identified, then we can be able to determine the degree of exposure. Then you need to have your records and observe what are the actions you need to take, and then you need to do the review, talk with the team, and agree on the course of action. Why do we need risk assessment in children's ministry? That's very important. Children are the most valuable asset, not only for our church, but if you look at Christ as our example, he made it very clear that they are very important in the kingdom of God. They are a gift from God. That's Deuteronomy 7 verse 13 and Psalm 127 verse 3. They are desirable. Genesis 9 verse 7, be fruitful and multiply. Children bring joy and blessing to adults. That's Samuel 20 verse 42. And the children are the most vulnerable and trusting. The child abuse in churches is a reality. That's the reason why we need to do risk assessment. I think if you look at what has been happening in the church environment in the past, in the decade or so, you've seen that there's been a number of issues that are arising as a result of child abuse from priests and clergy. The figure was sitting at 1,700 priests by the year 2019, which is a very large number, because with each priest, you might assume that it's 5 or so kids per priest, which means that that number could be very big. So it's an alarming number if you look at that. How do we protect children? This is very important for us. Let's look at what is the role of the church. Abuse of a minor remains the number one reason churches end up in court. I was very surprised when I read this, that I would have thought that in the church environment, that's where kids are secure, so we will not have these cases. But looking at what is happening in the world in terms of the abuse and what is coming out, maybe because in the Roman Catholic Church, this is something that is already in the media, that's playing out in courts. We might just have a false sense of security just because we haven't been found. So we don't know what is happening within our church until such time that somebody is bold enough to come up and report. So we can't say we are, excused or we are secure from such issues. It's important that we know how the church can protect the kids. We need to be aware that this is real and it's happening. We need to know the background of those that we put in charge of our children. Not in a bad way, not in a prying way, but it's always good to know who is looking after the children, what background. It helps when it's somebody that's been in the church, that's grown up in the church, that is known by the community. You need to provide awareness training for child abuse in the church. You need to have a policy for children's ministry volunteers that would then spell out what they could or could not do when it comes to their work around children. The children ministry as a department needs to have an oversight role of making sure that they are always aware of what is happening around children. They are always aware where there is perceived abuse of power by the adults. We always need to trust our gut. When you think that something is wrong, you need to trust your gut. Don't look the other way. Don't try and put it under the carpet, because then you are perpetuating the incident. Disregard familiarity, it can cloud your judgment. In other words, I think one of the things that is shocking as we learn more and more about child abuse is that most of the time the perpetrators are people who know the children, are people who are known by the community, are people who are known by the family. So disregarding familiarity, can put us at exposure. We need to report abuse. You cannot sweep it under the carpet, because sweeping it under the carpet means that you already are sacrificing some of the kids that might come in contact with whoever is emitting the abuse. The role of the leader, again, the leader also needs to be aware, very much aware of what is happening around, and be aware of what could go wrong with regards to ministering with children. You need to take a lead in risk assessment, and this is so critical. I don't think many of us take this seriously. Most of us have clubs at church in the afternoon. How many of us actually take the time to do a risk assessment? How many of us take the time to say, listen, there is 3 females with so many children. Is it a realistic number? How can the ladies protect the children should there be, any breach on our security? So risk assessment is very critical, not necessarily only when we are on outings, but also during our meetings, because many times we find that the clubs are managed by females who are by themselves in a church setting, on open church settings. And we know that there's been a number of attempts in a number of churches in terms of exposure of children. We need to make sure that we train our volunteers with regards to issues of risk, so that they are also on the alert, very much aware. And one of the things that we always promote with our children is that my rule of thumb is always when somebody needs to go to the bathroom, you can't go alone. I might as well just have the whole class going rather than having one child going to the bathroom alone. I think you always have to use your sixth sense in terms of just making sure that you always are on the lookout. Better to be over cautious than be too relaxed because you are trusting. Unfortunately, these days criminals are not respecting the church grounds. We are now playing grounds for evil, for criminals. So you cannot be trusting that we are at church so the children are safe. So you always have to do your risk assessment and make sure that you're minimizing your risk. Be close to your helpers to be able to pick up unwanted behaviors. Again, you need to observe. There are various forms of abuse. Verbal abuse is the biggest and the most dangerous form of abuse. Be wary of your counselors who might not be using the proper language that could damage the children emotionally. It's not only the physical damage, but emotional damage also. Engage with the children and note their body language. Again, the children will tell you without opening their mouths when something is wrong. And also observe the children around the adults. When they're uncomfortable, they might not voice it out, but you can read the body language that there's a discomfort. You need to trust your instinct as a leader. You need to play an oversight role. Again, this is very important. I don't know, guys, when the club is in session, as the director, I'm number one in the club. I'm the one that's there to make sure that everything is in order, everything is smoothly. When the class is in session, I'm actually roaming around each class, just making sure that there's nothing that could be of high risk. It's not because I lack faith, but I know that I live in this earth where it's full of evil. So it has nothing to do with my faith, but it has to do with me making sure that I'm observant and protecting those that have been put under my care. The role of the volunteer. You need to show love. When you love the children are quick to tell you what is wrong, what is happening with them. I was fortunate, I think 2 years ago, was in the guide class. This is where I was talking about those kids that were emotionally going through some emotional turmoil. When you give children attention and you show how much you can love them, they volunteer their head. They open up more than they would open up at home. And I think that's why I think there is emphasis that the role of the club is also to be aware of some of the things that are happening in the children and be quick to intervene. So when you show love to the children are quick. They'll tell you what they are going through and what is happening. Be compassionate. Always be sympathetic. Don't minimize any pain that they're going through, or irrespective of how minimally it looks to you. But be always there to show love, to show that you understand what they are going through. You need to also know your skills. Don't counsel if you're not a counselor. Don't counsel if you know that you don't know what you're doing, because you might cause damage more than you can be helping the child. Always have the attitude of referring the child. In fact, incidentally, what we've started in our club this year, we have appointed elders for each of the classes. So on top of the counselors, we have an elder that is helping the children with the devotions, helping the children with the various with the books, because each class is required to read a particular book. So the elders are taking the lead on that. But the intention also is that the elders, those who senior within the church, is to provide that support to, to the counselors of counseling some of the children. I think I saw that working again. I was just still talking about this case in 2 years ago, where one of our kids was expelled from school because of some serious offense, or was threatened to be expelled from school. And having an elder among us became such a powerful tool, because then the elder was able to counsel the child and spend time with the child. That I think by the time the child left the Pathfinder Club, the child was different, because we brought in the right resource, the right help for the child to be able to step in and help the children without condemning the child, but realizing that the child needs help. And it turned out that child had lost a friend, and nobody ever bothered to actually understand the impact of the dying of the friend on the child. So once you get involved, you realize that there's some healing that needs to happen in this child, so that they can be able now to really be focused. They are acting out their pain, they are acting out their anger, and it comes out as rebellion. It comes out in many forms. But once you start unpacking it, you realize that as a church we failed, as a family we failed to counsel these children. So you need to have a relationship with God, because God will give you that sixth sense that we're talking about, that instinct, because the Holy Spirit will impress upon you when you need to step in, when you need to intervene, when you need to engage the child. I mean, you can. I think maybe also. I don't know. It goes with patience. It goes with having an inquisitive mind of being observant of everything that's happening around you. I think you need to have that. When you're managing the risk, you need to look at all scenarios. What can go wrong? What can happen? As a result, then you become very observant of what is happening with different people. You are able to perceive or predict if there's a problem, and then you are able to then have that loving one-on-one talk with the child until they are comfortable now to open up with you. You need to be open and honest and transparent. The kids need to see you as an honest person, as a transparent person. Unfortunately, I'm one of those people who are very transparent. I think to my own fault, because people then quickly know my weaknesses. Because I'm one person who's free to share who I am. So if you pick up the weaknesses and abuse them, I'm okay also, because I know that God will protect me. But you need to be transparent. No, not to in a bad way. Somebody's drawing on my slides. You need to declare your weaknesses and do the necessary training to equip yourself. That's very important. You need to do that. Somebody's drawing on my slide. Tema or Mema. Know the rules and regulations on working with children. That is very important, people. I think you would be surprised that there are so many rules that govern how we need to treat the children, how to work with the children. That some of us, we constantly on the verge of being in trouble because we're too aggressive, or we take the hard road in terms of wanting to discipline the children. I think there are other ways of dealing with children that doesn't require you to then break the rules and regulations. The important facts that I wanted to share. One of the areas that also is the biggest exposure in working with children is human trafficking. I think we've seen what is happening in Nigeria. I think what is happening in Nigeria is cause me sleepless nights when I'm thinking about the fact that we go camping, we go hiking, we go on all of these things. I know that we have faith. We know that God will protect us, but that doesn't stop us from doing our risk assessment. If you're going to, let me make an example of my club. This year I have 116 kids. If I'm going to go with 116 kids to camp, I need to have the right ratio of counselors. I can't go to camp with 6 counselors with 116 kids. It just won't work, especially because we have different age groups. So you need to have a right ratio of kids versus the counselors when you go out camping. And those are important facts, because you need to know where the kids are at all times, and you need to make sure that at all times, they know the boundaries, they know what they cannot do. So when you look at human trafficking, 27% of trafficking victims are children. That's a large number by all accounts. 27%, these are the kids that still need guidance from their parents. These are the kids that still need shelter, that still needs the love from mom and dad. Not that the other ones don't need, but these are the critical ones, because they are still finding their ways through this cruel world. 27% is a large percentage of how many billions? 66% of those are girls. Our girls are very exposed. So at the moment, more than 4 million victims globally of children that are being trafficked. And then let's look at child abuse. The normal target is 8 to 10-year-olds. Those are the kids that are very trusting, impressionable, but also they are at the age where they fear losing parents, they fear losing. So the perpetrator might say, if you tell, I'll kill your family. So they're at that age where they have fear, so they will take the abuse because they don't want to lose their family. So 8 to 10-year-olds are very critical because they're very vulnerable at that age. 1 in 4 are girls and 1 in 6 are boys. Why are churches vulnerable? And that's very important, because it's going to touch on what I was saying. The church is a community of trust. We are all brothers and sisters in Christ, so we're not going to look into anything. So we're going to assume everybody has the same the spirit, the same intentions as us. So we overlook some of the telltales. We are ignorant of facts. We do not believe that abuse happens in the body of Christ. We lack safeguards. Because of our nature of trust, we neglect putting processes in place to identify, deal, and prevent child abuse. There are lots of opportunities for abuse in the church, especially with children. They are a great haven for abusers, because we have many children that are congregated under one roof, and we have activities everywhere, and children are roaming around freely. In fact, this is the one way I want to pause here, because in 2019, 18-19, we had 2 near abduction in our church. I think because we sit in church and the child wants to go in the car, we just hand the key. The child runs into the car. And not realizing that there are elements that roam around that are not there for what we are there for. They are there to do their own things. So this is very real, and I think we've had close calls in some of our churches, and I think I would say we are exposed, and we need to be realistic about it, and we need to do something about it. We are easy access because we open our gates to anybody who wants to come. We don't know everybody is allowed to come to the church, even passers-by. Anybody who just wants to drop by, they come in. So remember, not everybody who comes in for the same objective as you. Some are coming in because they want to do their own thing, and they are sent by the dark element, so they are in there for their own things. We have a great need for volunteers. So most times we are not screening our volunteers because we are desperate. We are constantly in need for people who are going to take care of our children. And I think this is where also we are very weak as a church. We don't invest in our children in terms of making sure that we have the good programs that are of high quality. In fact, if I was doing, anything on nominations, when we do nominations, I would say let's start with the children's ministry and make sure that we put in those high caliber people that we want to put in, in eldership or in all other positions, because then you know that your nourishment is happening in the children's ministries because you've gone there, you didn't put them at the bottom of your nominations. Screening of volunteers. The local church should take reasonable steps to safeguard children engaging in church-sponsored activities by choosing individuals with high spiritual and moral backgrounds as leaders and participants in program for children's church. That's from the church manual, Rev 2000, and it's just affirm what I was saying. That in our nominations, we should be starting with children's ministries, because remember, we are grooming leaders of the future. If our church is to grow to be the beacon of hope, we need to make sure that we are grooming the right leaders. So I think even the church manual is supporting exactly that. The basic requirements for screening of volunteers. The personal ministry takes the lead in screening of volunteers. Ideally, that's how it should be. The personal ministry should take the lead. The personal ministry should conduct the screening processes of all volunteers. How many churches can say they are doing that? I know we're not doing it, but this is very clear. Clearly, the guidance from the General Conference. Personal ministries should organize training program for volunteers and educate them, as well as the whole church, of the importance of protecting the children. The church is to develop child protection guidelines. The church board is to be involved in drafting and implementing the child protection policies. How to screen volunteers. You need to respect a volunteer who is willing to complete the form. You need to encourage the volunteer to participate. Take time to explain the reason for the screening program. Protect the children. Protect the volunteer who fills them in the form. This thing goes both ways. You protect the child, but also protect the volunteer by making sure that they have declared, so that you can be able to make an informed decision. Once they've declared that, listen, I have this weakness. If you are still prepared to take the risk and still appoint them to manage the kids, know that then you have processes in place to protect even him from himself, or her from herself, because they have already declared that they have a weakness. Ensure a confidentiality of all information provided for the church. That's very important, because if the person is on the mend, they are on the journey of recovery. Remember, because the church is a hospital. So you have people that are coming from prison, people from coming everywhere, being on the journey to mend. So if they now suddenly have the desire to start, getting involved, and they see this ministry as their calling, you need to then make sure that you help and work with them, and make sure that they are not exposed, and make sure that you provide as much structure, as much support, that they are able to protect, you are able to protect the children as well as protect them from themselves. The volunteer forms. What is in the volunteer form? The church should ideally set up a volunteer service review committee. That was a new one for me, and I think it's very important. Those who are serious about the ministry will gladly complete the form. In fact, if I can pause here, let me try and get you guys to be vulnerable. How many of you have completed the volunteer form? Because we all have been sent this form by the by the conference. Let me pause, if you allow me, my leader. Let's see by the show of hand how many have filled in the form. I know that I have, in case I can't, in case I can't raise my hand, but I have filled in the form. Let's see how many have filled in. So far, I see 3, 2 plus me. Because this, if you are willing to expose yourself, means that you're serious about this ministry. Because if there's been a need and a call for us as volunteers to fill in the form, what stops you from filling the form? You need to ask yourself that question. Okay. Thank you very much to those who've raised their hands up. But I think, oh, okay, I see. There is a polling that Ayanda has put up. I can see. Because I just want to see if we are walking the talk. You know, we are leaders. We need to start walking the talk. If we're not walking the talk, we need to then pause here and say, what is stopping us from walking the talk? What is it that you're uncomfortable with on that form? What stops you from filling in that form?
Let's encourage participation. We've got about 40 people now out of 100 and 100 and what? And something.
Guys, can we do it? Because this is a very important information, because it's also going to help us if there's a need for us to adjust the form, or if there's anything, sense of discomfort around filling in the form. We need to know what are the issues with regards to the volunteer form.
It's anonymous, and we don't charge for this one.
Okay,
should I share? I think maybe.
Yeah, it looks like we are well 60%. Well, 60. That's not bad. But just looking at it, maybe you can share, Ayanda. I'll then go back. So it looks like the majority. Hello?
My leader, I think the other poll that needs to be put down is how many have seen the form, because
I think. Go ahead, my leader.
Because I have a feeling that we are talking of a document that is not circulated to other people, and it is so as we talk about it, it's just a superficial document. It might have been circulated maybe to the church clerks, or it could be circulated to some people, but it has not reached the volunteers themselves. So I believe that from this group, we need to establish if ever they have seen the document itself.
Yeah, I think that's very important, because the intention now, my leader, is also making sure that we don't expose our volunteers. They need to know that this form is intended to protect even them. So I think this picture shows that there is still a gap. And I think also the gap could be sitting with us as the executive, because we should have been the one that circulate the form also. It can't sit at church board. We need to be able to make sure that it's sitting in the hands of those who are working in the children's ministry. So I think 9 out of 51, out of 60, that's a very small number in terms of the people who have done the form. And we really need to just make sure that we send through the form. But we can get during our question. Thanks, Ayanda. I think during our question, we can be able then to get the indication of why the percentage is so low. Thanks for that, Ayanda. So now if we can go back to our presentation, all information that's received should be treated as confidential and should be locked up by the local church. Personal reference checks should be conducted. If additional level of screening is required, it should be conducted immediately before commencing with the duties. In fact, as we go down, we'll talk more about the screening. The leader and the volunteer should be contacted once the form has been approved to be consistent in applying this requirement. So in other words, we can't have 2 out of 10 filling in the form, and others are not filling in the form, because we need to just make sure that we are consistent. We need to know when the form is not filled, what is the reason behind the form not being filled. So there are various levels of screening of volunteers. The basic level, the personal interview, completion of the volunteer service information form, and personal reference check. I don't think we have done this personal interview. Really, we're not putting a person into a boardroom or anything like that. We just talk to a person, you know, as a director, of the club. You just need to know who the person is, where they're coming from, what is their understanding of the pathfinders, what are they comfortable, what are their strength and everything like that, because also it helps you guide you in terms of how you can use your resources that are there. So I think it's basic. I think, if I'm not mistaken, most of my team now is filling the volunteer service form. And then intermediate, personal interview, completion of volunteer service information form, personal reference and home visit and observation, and then local criminal history check. This is when, maybe a person, I've indicated that we have people that have received the message and received the gospel while they are in jail and they're coming out. So you might need to do a little bit of, check in terms of making sure that before they work with the children, you know exactly what you are dealing with. And then the comprehensive screening, it's the above, and then, but also you go further and look at the National Criminal History check, and then you look at the National Child Abuse Registry check, and then psychological evaluation. I think, again, these would be determined by certain conditions or certain factors that you might pick up, as you engage the individual. Because again, when you are led by the Holy Spirit, God protects his children. He would give you an indication and a discomfort, because that's why they say trust your instinct, because you're going to feel that there's something that I'm not comfortable with here. I'm not sure what it is. Then you can ask the review committee to say, listen, can I have more details or a detailed check on this one? Because the person is good with the children. They want to work with the children. However, there's some sense of discomfort for me. Can we go and dig deeper? So you can be able to do that. Now, protecting the children during activities. I don't know how many of you have completed your plan for the year. I have a full plan for the whole year in terms of what the children are going to be doing the whole year. As a result, I know the activities that I need to already do an assessment, a risk assessment. You need to make sure that, when we were supposed, every time we're supposed to go to camp, myself and my deputy, we go to the camp and actually walk through the camp and identify some areas that could be of risk for us, so that when we come back, we know what we are dealing with. Maybe it goes with the fact that we're dealing with large numbers of kids, but we make sure that we visit the site. We make sure we know where everything is at. We start knowing, how many adults we need, what is the sleeping arrangement, how are we going to do this and that. It's very important that you do that. And again, one of the things that we were talking about was transporting of the children. I'm like that, Taban. I don't want kids being driven. I want kids in the bus, because that's when friendship, springs up. So I make sure that then we screen in terms of the bus. We make sure that we engage the driver in terms of our expectation, the owner in terms of our expectation. But in that bus, the children are not by themselves. We have counselors that then would be in charge and responsible in the bus. So you do all of that, and also make sure that the insurance is also addressed. Where in the event you have to use parents, make sure that then they fill in the form. Make sure that they provide all the details, because the church, the conference has all the forms and everything that needs to be completed for the various activities. In the field trip, that kids can slip, they can fall, they can scrape themselves. Make sure that that's all covered. And also, not only is you have the list of the. In fact, with us, we are very strict. We have the list of the children that they've registered for the activities. When they go in a bus, we call them one by one. There's no surprises. Nobody just drops in and say, "I've decided I'm going," because then it really causes us problems, because we've already accounted for how many volunteers do we need for so many kids. So if we're going to have 10 kids that are walking and saying, "Yeah, no, we change our mind, we're going," we don't allow that. Same thing with our camping. There's no weekend camping. It's either the kids is there right through, or you can't drop in as a child, you can't drop in as a parent, because we need to make sure that the kids are protected all the time. Those things are very serious and they're real. Abductions are real. We've seen what is happening so you can't expose yourself. Again, we're vulnerable because we are very trusting. So you need to make sure that you control the environment, and the kids know very well that they are safe and protected. So you make sure that you complete all the necessary documents. This is just an example of what you would complete for a field trip and your plans. The public transportation, or the rental vehicle, the school church vehicle, however you're traveling. The qualifications of the driver, all of those things. Even looking at the driver's license of the driver, because you can't have somebody that's driving your kids and they don't even have the driving license with them. So you look at all of these things. Activity risk factors. What is the level of risk? You look at the type of the activity. You look at the qualifications of the person that's going to be conducting that activity, and what is their experience. You look at the number of people that are going to be participating in the class or in that activity. You look at the equipment that's required, and what condition is that equipment in. Do we need to replace any equipment before you go there? Don't take the kids to an activity and end up putting them at risk because you didn't do your part, and now they are using equipment that's no longer fit for them to use. Look at the time that's allocated for the activities. Is it sufficient time? Are you going to find yourself rushing through the activities, thereby putting the kids at risk? Again, we've spoken about transportation to and from the activity. They look at the ratio of children to adult to children for assistance. That's very critical. And then you can sit down. When you have your assistant and you have a good working relationship with your assistants, this is when you guys sit down and say, okay, we've looked at everything. What else can go wrong? And I tell you what, it's amazing what you start coming up with, when you're sitting down and doing that, because that helps you to be more active. In fact, even our first aid kit, I have a first aid kit that stays in my car because of when we have activities at church, like when we have club. Even when we have club, you never know what could go wrong. The kids are always running, kids are always doing things. So you always have your first aid kit. Our first aid kit, when we had the seed Campori, we had the first aid kit, but we were caught off guard because we didn't count for dust. And there was a lot of dust, and we had 2 kids that were asthmatic. So that helped us now when we went to the next Campori to review and look at our first aid kit and said, okay, we need dust mask, we need this. So you always have to look at all of these things and make sure that you provide accordingly. And then you just think what could go wrong and be able to respond in that manner. So you need permission and release forms. Those are very critical. Guys, don't allow parents to dilly-dally with regards to this. With us, we can't take a child without the permission and release form. That's very critical. That form is critical because it gives you permission as a volunteer, but also it gives you an idea of what are the things that you need to look out for with the kids. Like I was saying, we have kids that are asthmatic. So we know now who is asthmatic. We know who has a asthma pump. We know who can run, can't run, can do this and that, because that form then gives you the details. So what are other emergency issues that you're dealing with per child? Those forms are critical to give you those details. The parent also sign and give you permission to be able to make sure you administer the treatment that the child may need. Like, for example, I'm saying we had asthmatic kids, so you have the permission from the parent that yes, you can help the child. So the copies then they stay with us. We have a file that we go with so that we are able to deal with any emergencies there. Now, well, we have to remember that while there are often many similarities in activities, outings or trips seldom are two exactly alike. So you always have to expect the unexpected. Look at him swinging. You might not have expected that, but that branch can break, a lot can happen. He could sprain his ankle. So you start looking at this thing and think what can go wrong and provide accordingly. This is an accident, so you need to make sure that in your transportation you do a full risk. The drivers, the license, but also the condition of the bus. Don't take the kids in a bus that has the bald tires. Don't take the kids in a bus where the wipers are not working. What happens when it starts raining and storming on the way? That puts the kids at risk. So you need to make sure that all of these things are secure. In fact, one of the things that we realize that, when you have a big club and you go on a camp, you need to make sure that you mention ahead of time. Every time we book a bus, we always make sure that we tell the driver we're going to need a trailer for the luggage, so that they understand that, we're not going to have luggage on the seats. So, anything happens to the kids, they're not dealing with the luggage. So you need to make sure that they've provided also a trailer for the luggage. Thank you. That covers this part of risk assessment or risk management.
Thank you, my leader. Before I open up for questions, I think I would like to zone on a few things that you cover there. One thing that I would like also to challenge the leaders is for them to familiarize themselves with the Children's Act, Chapter 38 of 2005. It has got at least all things that are considered as methods of abuse. So we need to familiarize that as we are dealing with children. And the other thing that I would like to say to the leaders here who will be working with children is that your election is not to be an investigator. You are not called to be an investigator. When a child reports that something has been done to them, you don't even investigate it. Hand it over to the police. You don't even hand it over to your elder. Take it to the police. The police are going to have to do the investigation while you pray. So it's not your responsibility to investigate and to say the validity of what has been brought to you by a child. The police are the ones that are then supposed to say, no, this was not true, it was false, or anything else. Don't even give it to your elders. It's not their place. It's not the place even of the pastor. It's the place of the police to investigate allegations of child abuse. So that one is something that we need to take note of. And while you were speaking, you covered something that's interesting about activities that we do and we are not well prepared, or even we have not done the risk assessment. And one thing that I'd like to put across is that even some of the honors that we do, some of them are very risky honors. One honor that comes to my mind is the swimming honor. It's a very risky honor. If you're not careful, you will take children and they will drown. Some of the people, we have got these swimming owners on our pages, and yet we cannot swim. We got them in the bathroom. So what I need to say to the leaders is that whatever we do, we have to make sure that we are competent. We have done the necessary risks assessments so that we can carry on with the act. Someone says, where do we get the Children's Act? Well, you can even Google it. When you just Google the Children's Act of South Africa, it will just give you the entire document and you can read it through. So those are the things that I just wanted to emphasize on this powerful presentation that we got. I don't know, I don't see any hands here. Brother Ayanda, are you seeing any hands on your side?
Maybe my leader, while we're looking for the hands, you've touched on a very important point. I think earlier on when I was presenting, I emphasized the importance of having qualified instructors and experienced. You know, for our church, we have a database of qualified instructors for swimming. As a result, that's why I said to plan ahead. We plan our program such that we work with them. You know, we can take 10 kids at a time. So we know the kids that need a swimming honor. So they go with a qualified instructor plus 2 volunteers, 1 for girls, 1 for boys, because when they go into the lockers, we make sure that they go in. Well, let me explain why I'm saying that. We use the Virgin Active. We've been using the Virgin Active because they've you know, allowed us to use their pool for the honor. So we will always have you know, a male and a female, so that when they go into the locker to change or anything, the instructors or volunteers are in there at all times. So those are the risk assessments you do. Inside the pool, the instructor is there. There's 2 of them. One is doing the testing, the other one is with the other kids, because kids will host play also. So you do all these assessments and make sure that you look at anything that could go wrong. Kids are not allowed to run because they can slip and fall. You put all of that, you talk to them ahead of time, but you need qualified people for these activities. Thanks, Jay. Thanks, man.
Whenever this subject has been spoken to, in most cases, there is always complete silence. We don't ask because it's an uncomfort, and usually I think it creates a bit of discomfort in amongst a lot of people. But one thing that we have to wake up to is the fact that the world is not what it is as we see it. You know, during the week, as I was during the week, I got to speak to one of the leaders about this subject again. And we were talking about the untouchables in the church, that there are people who have become untouchables, yet they are known to have abused. Because when they did that, the issue was taken to the church and it was not taken to the respective authorities, who are the police. So I urge all the leaders in this group right now that when you hear anything that relates to abuse of kids, you don't take it to church, you take it to the police. The church is not equipped with the right tools to investigate. You take it to the police are going to write a report and give it to the church that clears the particular individual, if the particular individual has done nothing, or if they've done anything, then there is conviction that will follow up.
I think there's also something that I would also like to say. You know, there's a whole lot more abuse going on around us that we don't even know. And where we know, then people become afraid that it's not my place. What if I am wrong? I told the elder he did nothing. I told the deacon he did nothing. And then the church does nothing about these things. But at the end of the day, we need to ask ourselves, who is the church? And if the church is failing, who is failing? So you will find that there is an unending cycle that just where there is no one taking accountability where the elder is saying, I need somebody to report this thing. And the member is saying, why don't you do something? Because you know, why do you want me to report? And we then end up having an environment where people basically mind their own business. And also the other problem that is there in church, besides the challenge of members not knowing when to speak and when not to speak, and elders not knowing and leaders not knowing when to speak and when not to speak, is also the parents. You also find that sometimes the mother is the one that actually is in denial of the situation, or perhaps the mother knows and does not want their issues to be taken out, and you are a friend to this family and you know what is happening. What do you do? Do you go to the police to get the two parents arrested and leave the child stranded because of what you know and all these things? So we are really in a vicious cycle that is very difficult to manage. And I think really, among other things, while the situation is complicated, what is also a genuine problem is that our church is just full of people who are cowards, in many cases, at leadership positions that are so high in their esteem and their responsibility, being responsible of people and kids and people's children. And when they find that a certain person has an issue, you'll find sometimes a whole church voting a person into eldership when there's a cloud of things around that person. You'll also find that there are people that get elected to lead young people when we know that they have a background with kids. So we just are full of a church that is just full of cowards. And for me, it makes it difficult sometimes for the few who are willing to speak, because then you end up being personal and being hated by many people, and you end up minding your own business. So really, I'm really speaking from a point of frustration. It's a vicious cycle where the church is just caught up in a web of nobody wanting to take any responsibility, no accountability. And the same people become the only people that keep raising these things, and then they become the enemy of many. And the church is just so accommodative in all these cloudy circumstances that we deal with on a day-to-day basis. So I think for me, really, I don't know how we can deal with it, but what I can definitely explain well is that we are just caught up in a messed up situation where people are just unwilling to present their cases because of the weakness of the leadership that we often get in our churches, and that nothing happens when it's this particular person. And it goes from the church level all the way up to conference level. That some of those people are used by the conference when the conference knows that there are cloudy circumstances around those people in certain circumstances, in certain clusters. So it's one of those frustrations.
Good afternoon. Yeah, so mine, I just wanted to just say, I think there are also, I'm not a lawyer, but I think there are legal consequences of not reporting cases if you know of a crime and you don't report it. So we also just need to acquaint ourselves with that. If we know that there's an abuse that has happened, especially within our church circle, and you do not say anything or report it, there are legal consequences to it. So it just doesn't end within the church. It might also come to you and affect you personally. I will stop there.
Thank you, Malita. We have actually been willing participants in certain crimes by not reporting. So it is, we should therefore understand that there is consequences for not reporting, and they are serious, and there are serious ramifications for that. You know, we have yet kids actually committing suicides in the church. And when you follow up, you realize that a child could not take it because of the abuse that has been happening. And the church has been aware and has been silent. This is why I'm saying that this is one subject that is, I'm very passionate about. And when Ayanda was speaking right now, he was actually zoning into a discussion that I had with another leader yesterday, where we have people that are being used by the not only the churches, but the conferences. And there is a cloud hanging around them that has to do with the abuse of kids. And the church has done nothing because these people appear to them as untouchables. That is the challenge the church has. There are people that we respect to the detriment of our kids, and that should stop. And I believe that in this session, the leaders that are here, you have been empowered to deal with those things. Whenever you are facing those challenges, in most cases, follow the right procedures. And the right procedure when it comes to the issues of abuse, like I said, I repeat it again, is not taking it to the church board. When it comes to the issues of child abuse, it's not taking to the church board. That's not the procedure.